Hello, hello.
Good, I meant.
Was your spin choreographed?
No.
It felt right. Felt like the right choice. I wish I had a spinny chair to spin in.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. I'll give you guys a few minutes to get into the chat. I'll ask some questions to get us started. But we are talking about the second half, the latter half of Dracula by Bram Stoker. It's gonna be fun.
Should be good.
Should be solid. Should be good. First off, I just want to know what everyone's Halloween plans are. Just before we get into book discussion, give people time to get in the chat. What are you dressing up as? What are you doing? Jacob, would you care to share?
I am in the wrong chat for this conversation. I have very, very minimal plans at this point, meaning non-existent and to be determined.
So we're just gonna remove Jacob from the chat.
Immediately kick. No longer invited back.
We'll try again next time. We did most of our Halloween stuff like this week. Yesterday was our Halloween party, so.
I feel like that somehow, even though Halloween's closer to next weekend, it feels wrong to have anything Halloween happening in November.
Yeah.
So have to do it this weekend before. Yeah.
Agreed. Brendan is here. Hi, B. So is Emily. Hi, Emily. I wasn't sure if you'd be here today, so thanks for being here. I only read 74%. Spoilers are fine, but I'm awake at 6 a.m. in here. Emily, you're always doing the most, honestly. You're doing more than anyone else. Hi, Narnie. Sorry, have to give Narnie a special shout out. Can't wait to watch Hocus Pocus and carve pumpkins. See, that's our big plans now. We finished like the Halloween party. We dressed up. Now we get to do like carving.
Are you doing that on the 31st then? You did that for Halloween?
I think we'll do it this weekend.
Nice.
And then, yeah, we might go to a friend's house to hand out candy. Because if you guys don't know, like trick-or-treating is like a dying thing. Everyone does trunk-or-treat here. So kind of depressing. So we're going to try to go like find the trick-or-treaters, basically. And we don't have Halloween here. I have exams on the 31st. I'm so sorry. That's not much of a celebration. That's a bummer. Do you like Halloween, Emily, even though you don't have it? It's my favorite, clearly. Well, the second half of Dracula. Are we ready to get into it?
I think we're ready.
Basically, what was happening in the second half? Give us a recap.
I feel like there was a switch. You know, the first half of the book, I think I mentioned it, I read all of it in one sitting. It was compelling because I felt like I had no idea what was going to happen. And then at least the early parts of this second half, the third quarter, we'll call it, felt really a little slow. Like you got the stuff going on with Renfield, and I don't totally understand like why he got killed, but you know, he dies. Mina starts turning into a vampire, and they're looking for the coffins. But other than that, it felt like the pace completely changed, and you know a little bit what's almost like you know what's going to happen. Like at this point, we've acknowledged there's vampires. We're hunting down Dracula. Let's get to it.
Yeah.
Am I missing items? Are there other big things you think happened in that early stage?
No, truly, it is Mina, Renfield, and coffins. That's how I would describe it. And it was like, I get the idea of us tracking down these coffins. Like, I don't need every minute detail of that process. Like, I can put it together.
Tracking down the different ports they went to. And it did take me a minute when they were calling them like boxes of earth.
Yeah, I didn't know.
It finally clicked. A couple chapters.
I asked Brendan, I'm like, why are they hunting down these boxes? He's like, they're the coffins. I was like, no, changes everything, changes the whole game. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think basically that whole section is just building to the road trip.
The road trip.
Family fun road trip at the end. How do you guys feel about like the second half's pacing, but mostly like that end, like road trip vibes? How did you feel about the pacing change? To me, at least, I felt like it changed. How did you feel like the flow went? What did you feel book, basically.
For me, it felt like the start of our second half was slow, and then once they got to the road trip, it's kind of that build up to the conclusion, and so it felt a little bit of a pace increase with the road trip, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
I still thought the first half of the book was a lot more compelling.
Yeah.
I don't know. Once they were on the road trip, it felt like, we're going to go find Dracula. There wasn't a lot of mystery to it at that point. You're just kind of waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, I think the most interesting things in the novel had already happened by that point for me. And it's kind of those chapters were like the hurry up and wait chapters. It's like let's keep waiting, or like we're gonna keep going back and forth between these people who are seeing nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Yada yada. And I felt like the most interesting part for me in the book was actually maybe a few chapters after starting the second half. So maybe it's like 18, 19, when Mina starts having things happening to her, and like, you're like, Dracula's gonna come for her. You boys are idiots. They're like, stay home, Mina, stay home. You can't help us. Even though she figures out everything, the whole book.
Yeah, you're talking about that chapter where she's like kind of in and out of dreaming, and the mist is coming towards her, and then wakes up, or like dreams the white face being above her. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, we need to leave her out of it because she's faint of heart. I'm like, you're not telling her stuff, and so she doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You're idiots. You're leaving her susceptible. Anyways, but that was the most interesting part for me, kind of like building up to like learning his traits, or I don't want to call them superpowers, kind of, but
like abilities.
Yeah, learning his like abilities, them tracking stuff, them convincing everyone about like that Lucy is a vampire and that vampires are real. Like that part was interesting to me, and then it just was like, okay, now I'm bored.
Yeah, I think that I don't remember if the stuff with Renfield was before or after Mina, like that scene with Mina.
Yeah.
But those two interactions kind of felt like the last interesting scenes until the actual fight at the end.
Yeah.
That wasn't huge.
Yeah, I had a hard time with the end too. I know we're spending a lot of time on the end, but I was like, of course they're gonna kill off the American. They're like, he can go. Anyways.
So is that scene with Mina, is that kind of your highlight scene from the book, or just from the second half?
I actually think the scene where they break into the room, because they're kind of finally putting stuff together, the slowest men in the fucking world. And they put it together and break in, and like the count is there. That is the most memorable scene for
with
me.
Mina and Jonathan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I really liked that scene. So everything kind of went down from there for me. I don't know, what was your most memorable scene? Do you have one?
I think the one with Mina when he comes in as the mist for the second half. But for the book as a whole, I think I would have to go back to some of the early stuff with Jonathan actually being at the castle and like seeing the Count climbing down the outside of the castle and him trying to climb the outside of the castle. I thought a lot of that was interesting.
That's true, and it sets very early, like even like the opening chapter of like setting how people feel about him going there and all of that. I feel like that was interesting. But let's see.
I would wonder. Oh, pacing.
Sorry, I'm bad about this. Pacing was awful. Sorry, you guys. I sleep on the pacing question. But yes, the pace of the second half, or maybe like the very end, very not for me. I feel like he dragged out everything on the road trip, and then the Dracula confrontation was over in a page.
And we know it's going to happen.
It's like, let's make it more. I didn't feel like it was interesting at that point. I was like, okay.
It does make me wonder. I know we didn't watch a specific adaptation for this one, but if you were thinking about what content would actually be in a movie, I think our first half of the book, you can keep most of it. And then the second half of the book, maybe chapters 17, 18, 19, and 27. You can cut out 5 or 6 chapters in there pretty
Yeah.
easily. It would actually make me more interested, I think, in watching
Yeah.
it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, honestly, the pacing was so frustrating to me. It felt so slow. Even the fight at the end seemed so anticlimactic. Yeah, it's just like we've been hunting this like all-powerful kind of being for the most part. I felt like it should have been a more clever interaction at the end. I don't know.
Well, even the fight at the end, there wasn't really a whole lot of fight. Dracula was was already out, and then they just cut off his head real quick to finish it up. But there's no actual confrontation. It's really just a matter of tracking him down, and there's so
Mhm.
much build up to it. I completely agree with the anticlimactic.
Yeah. I did like the idea that like Mina kind of had this connection to him and we can kind of use it. Like I think that was kind of cool, especially if we do think about like when the book was written.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, I thought that was a cool element. But then even they had to beat that like a dead horse. We tried again, and she sees his fog. We tried again. Oh, she sees his water. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that was a cool element. Let's
Creaking floorboards. Like, well, that's a boat. Still on a boat. Yeah.
clean water. It's just it was a cool element. He had to like wear it out a little bit. Oh, on people's favorite description. Yeah. Jacob, yes, the description of him crawling down the walls like a lizard was so freaky.
I don't know. I think of vampires. I think of the whole like turn into a bat and fly around.
Yeah.
I didn't think about the whole crawling on walls, but I guess bats do that too.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Does anyone have like a memorable scene that they want to share? Yeah. I definitely think like the more I think about it, I just do think that scene with Mina has to be mine.
Yeah, when they break in on that door.
Because I felt like I'm like everyone should know what's going on at this point. Like we've already seen this. We've seen this film before.
In
Like
the first half of the book.
yeah, and she's kind of trying to hide it because she doesn't want to make it their problem. But I'm like, come on, you guys, come on, figure this one out.
Too, I think made me have to kind of reframe the proximity of everything because they were at the asylum, right, talking with Renfield, and then just go basically next door.
Yeah, I felt like it all was like in the same building, is what it felt like to me.
Yeah, very,
And
very.
then yeah, they had to like run to their room. I mean, the Renfield stuff was kind of interesting at the end, but we also kind of saw it coming. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably when they find him about to die was very memorable. I mean, it is kind of interesting because he decides to like, well, one, he's acting very different and he's suddenly very gentlemanly and, you know, is like very refined in his language and thoughts. And then he comes like clean about a lot of things to try and help them.
Do you think that's why he ends up getting killed? That was a bit of a gap area for me. Was he seems like he's been this follower of Dracula. Dracula comes to his window, promises him all of these things. I wasn't sure why it changed and Renfield gets killed.
I'm guessing it's just because he wasn't behaving loyally anymore. I'm guessing because he also like tries to tell Mina, kind of hint to her that like she needs to stay safe. Kind of. I don't know exactly what he says, but in their first meeting.
He's starting to give some warnings out to people.
Yeah. And I feel like he's no longer serving the Count.
That's fair.
Doesn't want loose ends, probably. He's like, I'm hitting the road. I don't need you here. The asylum was Dr. Seward's house, right? See, I thought it was because I remember her saying like a floor below she could hear him, like hear Renfield moving about.
That was when I was confused. I was like, is Mina in the asylum now? Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But then
I think they are one and the same.
Like Simmons is the one that came and found Renfield in the asylum or in his room, I guess. But I suppose it could be Dr. Seward's house, and he has attendance there because he's the doctor and he's hosting an asylum also.
That's just something they could do at that time.
It's probably not the key focus for the novel.
I know it only happens twice, but I really loved every interaction with Dracula's three brides. Yeah. I feel like the interesting, what was I, oh my gosh, I just like thought flew out of my brain. I feel like that was very taboo at the time. So I feel like that was an interesting aspect for him to put in, like the count having the 3 brides.
I don't have a fully put together thought about it. It just came up, but the 3 brides, I wonder, he talks a couple of times about like Japanese and Norse mythology or lore, any of that, and Greek as well, and that whole 3 women with the fates sort of thing. I wonder how much imagery there's supposed to be with that. Like I said, I don't have a second thought on that. It's just the initial.
Makes you think, though, for sure.
Yeah.
And then Emily agrees. That was my understanding about the asylum being his home.
Perfect. That clears up a lot for me.
Yeah, changes the whole game.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, I guess, just the purpose of the novel, what were your takeaways, everyone? Did anyone have a like strong takeaway? What do you think the purpose of this story is, especially at this time?
I know I'm partially reading off our shared question list here, but part of what we're looking at there is the religious aspect of it. And it's not something that I noticed hardly at all at the start, but especially on our road trip, actually, they talk a lot about like the Holy Circle.
Yeah.
Obviously, the papers and the crucifix, everything. Yeah, there's a ton of that in the second half when they're trying to ward off the vampires.
Yeah, I thought the end was much more heavy-handed in that way of like saving souls from damnation kind of vibe. Which I guess, yeah, I didn't feel as strongly in the first half, but because I almost feel like the purpose of some parts of this novel is a little bit good versus evil, but I almost think it's like religion versus like damnation, like sinfulness.
Like a purity, impurity.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. It was interesting to me how much, I guess my understanding is this is kind of the first appearance of vampires in storytelling, right? Is that?
I thought so, but I mean, I think vampires have been around for a long time, so I don't think he
Stoker didn't invent them? Okay.
I don't think so. Someone can back
it. Through how much there were like these elements that were almost known ways to ward off the vampires or fight them. You get like the garlic and the wafers and all this that is Van Helsing just knows that these are the things that are going to work. You have to cut off the head and drive the stake through the heart. There's no discussion around, I guess, how Van Helsing knows all of that.
Yeah.
And he has to convince everybody else of the existence of them. Like Seward especially is really tough to convince initially.
Truly.
I think the balance between Van Helsing having all these methods and like known ways, but other people not even believing in vampires to start with.
Yeah.
I have some questions. I'd be curious to research a little bit and find out what vampires were before this novel.
Yeah, maybe if anyone has an understanding of the legends of vampires, why do they exist? Where did they come from? Where did they go? My understanding was a little bit of research on it, like the tiniest touch, was that a lot of people think that the idea of vampires kind of came from like people like rabies and people going mad, and like kind of that could be a part of the inspiration for the characters, but I don't know.
I could see that even more so leaning into the religious aspect of it than kind of back to your initial question that especially at this point, if there's not like an in-depth understanding of what a lot of these things like rabies come from, you could, I think, pretty easily say our cure for everything is going to be God. And if you have rabies, that's because you were impure in some way, and then you have to source out of it.
And then it kind of goes hand in hand with the animal part of like, all these animals being like summoned by this creature.
Yeah, is there a limitation to the animals he can control? It seems like that scene with Renfield when he's calling them all up to the window. It's kind of whatever he wants.
Anti-rat. Anti-rat.
Anti-rat.
I know. I was trying to figure out if, like, do you feel like Stoker is religious, or do you think he's like being satirical in the way, like, even from the get-go, you have the people there in Transylvania or whatever, like crossing their hearts for them and giving them crucifixes or giving Jonathan a crucifix. I couldn't tell. I almost feel like he is religious.
Yeah, I would lean more on the religious side than the satire side. I almost, Jonathan at the beginning kind of rolls his eyes a little bit at some of the warning signs that people are using when he's heading to the castle. And it almost feels like a cautionary tale. Like, this is why you've got to believe all these things strongly, because if you don't, you see what happens.
Yeah, it's true. If you're impure, you're going to end up like old Lucy.
Exactly.
You hate to see it, but that's what's coming for you. I do think this novel is like very much, it's tackling like science versus philosophy, like spirituality, sex, all of that. I feel like is like hard-hitting parts of it.
It's interesting though, because if we're I think on the same page, that it feels like Stoker's pretty religious, and that's kind of the overall message that he's pushing. He then also has Van Helsing, who's very much like the science-based.
Yeah.
And typically you have so much opposition with science in the church, or science and spirituality as a whole. Interesting to kind of pair those two together from this side. And
very clearly, because later it says his first name is like Abraham. Bram's first name is Abraham. And I'm like, so Van Helsing was just you like getting off on writing yourself as a very cool guy. Like, you were your inspiration for.
Gets halfway through the book and is like, how can I be the hero of this story?
How can I be? I do get the feeling that he had a hero complex. Just a hint. I mean, gotta have the hero.
Even from the first half, everybody doing the blood transfusions.
Yes, like all men are heroes. Stoker was born in Ireland and I think was Protestant. So yes, religious. Yeah, especially for the time. Makes sense. Thank you, Nikki, for the 411 on it. Yeah, I definitely think it was, I don't know, he was definitely sending a specific message with it. And he was giving these men very heroic traits, but also he kind of actually did even it out with some things, like when Van Helsing's kind of hysterical after the funeral because they lost like Lucy, which actually I think is like.
And when he's crying with Mina, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And then when he laughs, and then when he's like laughing kind of hysterically with Seward.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's in the carriage or something. But anyways, he's showing like maybe traits that aren't strictly like manly and brave. More real person traits.
For the men, I agree.
Yeah.
For Mina, like even that scene you referenced with Van Helsing crying with her after the funeral, her role then becomes the motherly. I think it talks about it directly. Like,
yeah,
it has to be a woman who's doing the nurturing and like the motherly traits. And like we talked about, there's so much of it that she figures out along the way, and like the only reason they can figure this out is because she transcribed the audio journals.
Mm-hmm.
And then her role gets reduced to like caring for Van Helsing.
Yeah.
Or at the end on the road trip, getting protected by Van Helsing.
And see, at that point, I was like, come on now. Van Helsing is writing this in a little bit of a creepy pervert way. Be so real.
Oh, the hypnosis? Yeah, it was a little weird.
I was like, okay. I don't know about this part. Just, I don't know. I get that like characters change when they become vampiric, but I'm like, I don't know. You've tried to make Mina a semi-strong female character, and yeah, again, you've just reduced her a lot.
Yeah. By
her being kind of having the brain of a man. I love that part. Has the brain of a man, heart of a woman.
Reading that, I did think about like, I bet this is gonna come up This line feels like it should be discussed.
Yeah, like Chris is going to talk about that. I'll let her get to that.
Especially because it's not outside of Van Helsing. It's not like the other men in the story go and figure stuff out. If she had the brain of most of the men in the story, it would not have gone well.
It's true. It's very true. I also think it's interesting, like, Mina was pretty open-minded to help because she trusted like what her husband had wrote. She trusted him, and then she like was pretty on board. But like Seward was borderline impossible to convince, despite seeing so much more than the other men, and the other men were on board much quicker. I don't know. I found that like it was interesting that they're both doctors, like you said, and they have like very opposing feelings. I don't know. Would you be as difficult to convince as Seward? Everyone would you be hard to convince if you were in his shoes, or would it be easy for you?
I think I'd be hard to convince.
You think so?
100%. Yeah, I think it would just immediately be the skepticism towards whoever's trying to convince me.
Yeah.
And you almost have to have the personal experience.
To do it.
Even if it's someone you already kind of trust and like have a good relationship with, I think you would believe it, or I would believe it, but still be skeptical until I had some reason that I'd experienced something that changed that.
Yeah. Nikki said, I watched one analysis and then went into depth, with Stoker/Society's homophobia after the Oscar Wilde trial. Stoker and Wilde were friends and allegedly lovers at one time.
I did think this was interesting. That this just reminded me, and you brought up the story, I think in the last discussion, the sexual elements of it.
Yeah.
All the, like vampire person interactions are male female.
Yeah.
There's never a point where you're
Yeah, that is interesting. So it is almost like, well, even the scene with Mina, like feeding on him and he's like feeding on her, like that's kind of, written in a sexual way.
100%. Yeah.
So, but that is very interesting. Now I feel like I need to deep dive, Nikki, into this. I could go let it take over my life. Oh, wait, let me get, sorry, this first. So some people think that in the first half of the novel that Dracula represents Wilde. Stoker was one of the first people who wrote vampires. Oh.
Wow.
Okay. The more you know. I'm gonna have to look that word up. So sorry, chat. What does that mean? Anyways. To Emily, I was ready to strangle him. Yep. At the sexism, yeah. It was very interesting though, because he had moments of writing like the women being, or like Mina, being so sensible and powerful. And then the next, like we talked about, but like the next he just takes it away. And you're like, well, your book wouldn't like have the same ending, like you said, if you didn't have Mina. So
no, Mina has a lot of great moments and then they all get somehow mitigated.
Yeah, very much so. I don't think I would believe it either without firsthand experience. Yeah, so if you were, but I feel like Seward had a lot of firsthand experience and he was still like, no. And then come back the next day and she'd be there and he's like, no, I still don't believe it. I guess that would be difficult.
I could see it being tough. Do you think you would believe it without the experience?
I think it depends on who was telling me. Like if you told me that you had an experience, I'd believe you, like immediately.
But would you believe like my perception of that experience or the existence of vampires for the world? Because I think that's where the distinction would come for me. I don't know. Like, I think about paranormal experiences, and I think there's plenty of things that can drive those. I wouldn't go so far as to say I don't believe in paranormal, because that just feels risky.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
But I also wouldn't say I believe it. And so if somebody has an experience, I don't think I believe in the paranormal until I experience something with it. But I'm not gonna discount it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I think I'd believe it more easily
Okay.
than you would. I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know.
Well, I guess kind of wrapping up the novel, going back to a classic question for us. What's who are your favorite characters out of it? And then I guess we probably should talk about our predictions, which just on quick recollection, I think we 100% nailed it, right? We were perfect.
Not one thing was wrong.
Okay, cool. Same page.
Absolutely. There's no doubt.
Perfect.
Favorite character. See, again, I think just we've talked a lot about Mina, and I do think in a lot of ways she's my favorite character. But I think they did her dirty so much.
Yeah.
And so that is hard for me. I do think you have Dracula kind of has to be a favorite too. He kind of everything revolves around him. But then I didn't feel like he got enough Dracula screen time.
Yeah, he's really not in the book.
Mm-mm.
Despite being the title character.
Yeah. Who's your favorite?
I think probably either Jonathan, just from the first half primarily, or Van Helsing. Like you're saying, there's an awful lot of the story that Mina would have been. And then once she starts turning into a vampire, her character is just reduced to so little.
Yeah.
I think Van Helsing continues to be interesting.
Yeah. I will say a prediction I kind of got right a little bit was like Mina and Van Helsing were like working together to the end. But I did say they would solve it, I think, by themselves. So the other people were there. Yeah.
The main, I think, prediction that's sticking out that I remember was I was hoping that it was going to be a story that Dracula just wins, everybody else dies. That feels like that's an atypical ending.
Yeah.
So I wasn't close at all on that. But I think that was a hope more than a prediction.
Yeah.
I can waffle on it a little bit.
Yeah. Who else had favorites? Okay, Jonathan Harker. Brennan, why was he your favorite? Out of curiosity. I feel like he had he was stable mind, stable narrator.
And he has more depth to him than a lot of the characters do. Maybe just because we have him on his own for the first
that's true.
pages or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he loves his wife a lot. He's writing to her. He's very devoted, trying to do his best in all of the situations, it seems like. Yeah. Without stealing the show. I don't know. I don't like how Mina was written mentally, like how she thought. Like it was of the time. Yeah, like also when she's like, I can't trouble the men. I have to make things easy and comforting, and I have to still offer them tea even though I'm very ill. It's like, come on. Come on.
When she's initially weak and pale and all this after that first visit from Dracula, she's like trying to take care of them as a way to distract herself and hide it, and like none of them notice, despite having just seen this with Lucy not that long ago.
Yeah, very much so. I think mine changed throughout the book depending on what was happening. Things changed so much, and some got boring to read at times. Yeah. I definitely make perspective scale. Renfield should be my favorite, honestly.
He had a good redemption arc. He's coming back to warn people. I wouldn't hate it.
You can't get Renfield. Okay, I also thought that John Harker was my favorite. His part of the book was probably my favorite.
I really think I'm gonna have to watch a movie of this, but it has to be a third of the movie is the first 50 pages.
Yeah. I hope. Yeah, if anyone has some good recommendations of like an adaptation that we should watch, let us know, because I know we both want to.
Yeah, I wrote one down from last time. That's the like Van Helsing early 2000s, I think.
Oh yeah, like 2004. Yeah, we need to watch
that.
If
there's any others, absolutely.
Yeah, leave them below. Nikki said I liked Mina too, but yeah, he definitely did her dirty. I low-key wish she got to keep her cool forehead scar. That would have been cool. But then she wouldn't be perfect for the era. She wouldn't be a perfect Victorian woman.
Her purity would be gone.
Her purity gone. I know it did, and it did get a little whiny when she's like, "I'm impure." I'm like, oh, Mina, we got bigger fish to fry. Come on, kicks off the story. He's an attorney. Okay, Brennan, we get it. He loves his wife. He takes out Drac.
Somehow I feel like the attorney part is the key argument there for Brendan.
I get why you like him, because I do think Van Helsing gets a little creepo at the end, in my opinion.
No, Harker's just a solid character throughout.
He is. The Flies. Emily's also team Renfield. We're all team Renfield a little bit. Well, one thing that was interesting is, how they kill the vampires. Ever, did you have a favorite way that a vampire was killed? Or do you have an idea in your mind the best way to kill a vampire? If Jacob does have this vampiric experience, he needs some guidance.
For killing me or the vampire?
For killing the
Because I've got personal choices if it's me. I'd love to not do the off with the head part.
I like just the stake through the heart, but I'm a Buffy the Vampire Slayer lover. So it's just something about the, just straight through the chest. And the stuffing the mouth with garlic.
The stake through the chest at least feels just like a method of killing and not of torture. Somehow the garlic or they didn't talk about iron in this really. Maybe the crucifixes are iron.
That's true. Because I feel like this has evolved, like the way you kill them, but a lot of it's the same.
Yeah, so what's the method for killing in Buffy or like Vampire Diaries?
Twilight? I think a lot of them, like, it's a stake through the heart is definitely Buffy's is stake, like a wooden stake. I think with Vampire Diaries, someone fact check me. I think it's a stake as well. Sometimes they have to use special wood from a special tree to kill certain vampires that are more powerful. But I think it usually is a stake. I think that's pretty consistent across the board. Do you guys know any other fun ways to kill vampires? But yeah, do we have any?
I feel like the garlic might be my pick. The garlic in the mouth, but not like the garlic flowers, just like
a clove.
Oh, I was just thinking like you get somebody eat some garlicky pasta or something and then just
yeah. I did watch, you guys, if you like Disney Channel originals, I'm going a little off base, but not entirely. This is a Disney Channel original movie called My Mom's Date with a Vampire. I love it. I'm a little nostalgic, but it's a very old one, and they use a lot of names and stuff from Dracula. So I was watching it this week, and I was like, I know that. Like the restaurant's called Renfield's Restaurant and stuff. So anyways, and then like the vampire hunters, Van Helsing and stuff like that, which I didn't know beforehand. But anyways.
What's your favorite, having watched some of these other adaptations, what's your favorite version of the vampire? Now that we've read the original too.
Oh my gosh. Wait, let's see how people want to kill their vampires, and then I'll think on that for a second.
Perfect.
Favorite type of vampire? Oh my gosh. I would like to use a stake, but use a crossbow or something to deliver the stake. That'd be pretty sick.
Like that.
That is pretty sick.
A crossbow to deliver the garlic.
Just a catapult.
Exactly.
I'm a wimp, so I need something to ward them off, not kill them. Garlic, holy water. Holy water! That's one I didn't think of.
Yeah.
You could do the holy circle or whatever they did. It's not a bad idea. Squirt gun filled with garlic paste.
We're thinking the same way.
It's original. I'll give you that. Garlic on the stake.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Those are some good ones. Yeah, I think I would just do tried and true, like a wooden stake. My favorite vampire, because I feel like, do you guys say if you have a favorite adaptation of vampire too?
It may like it could be the original. It could be what we just read.
Yeah, I
haven't watched Vampire Diaries extensively, or Twilight, or Buffy.
Oh, see, Twilight, but so many good options. I'm gonna say Vampire Diaries because they are so hot for no reason.
So it's not about the vampires at all.
Well, they can compel still. They can like mind control.
Okay.
They can run really fast. They can't fly. What else do they do in Vampire Diaries? Yeah, I would say I like Buffy too, but there's so much simpler creatures. Like in it, they're kind of just like, I want to drink blood. And they burst into ash when she kills them in that rendition. But yeah, do you guys have a favorite rendition of vampire? I would say Vampire Diaries. Buffy would be secondary. And I don't think Twilight would really make the list. I'm sorry about that. I enjoy Twilight, but it's not like the vampires are particularly interesting, in my opinion.
That's better.
Oh, we do have a movie recommendation from Nikki. I like in movies when sunlight turns them to ash super dramatically. I only half read that. I do too, and that's also Vampire Diaries. They have to wear their sun ring to go out in the sun, or else they get burnt. So
they wear one little ring and that protects them from the sunlight.
It has a spell on it by witches. See, you just need to watch, okay? Don't simplify this. This is a show for the ages. This is going to stand the test of time.
Sounds iconic.
Yeah, truly. See, Brennan has taste. Vampties for me. Good choice. Midnight Mass, Vamps. Narn, I don't know who those are. Do you know, Jakey?
I do not. Got to do some research.
I'm not. Yeah, I don't.
General idea of vampires from. I actually don't know what that's from for me, because this is really the first true exposure to it that I've had outside of just Halloween as a generalization.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, it's on Netflix, Narni says. Okay. Midnight Mass.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind. I do miss the fact that they don't like turn into bats, really, in Vampire Diaries. I would like that element.
Yeah, that's an interesting ability to mix in.
So I do have one last crazy question that I don't have an answer for, but this is just kind of generalizing like the Victorian era. A lot of iconic characters came from this time. Obviously Dracula, which we read, but Jekyll and Hyde, like Sherlock Holmes, was that around there too?
I think Sherlock Holmes is a little bit more recent, but I couldn't put a year to it.
Like, why do you think these characters came about during this period of time? And also, how have they stood the test of time? If anyone has an answer to this, like, I have no answer, but I want to pick your brains.
I guess the other one I maybe would throw in there I guess Frankenstein's later, but kind of feels like that same type of story.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder how much for, like this one, we talked about the religious element to it. How much is it a way to explain things that don't fit cleanly into science and don't already exist in religion? There's some ways that he tries to tie it to like scripture. He brings that like scriptural, he uses that word a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But I almost wonder how much they come about because of that way of explaining the things that science doesn't. And then they stick around because even once we have other explanations, the science is interesting, but it's more boring. Like it's less fantastical.
Yeah.
I could see that being why they stick around, I guess.
Yeah. I just find it so interesting that like how long ago this was really written in the like 1800s, and like the idea of vampires I think was already in existence, you know, and different places came to that idea without like discussing it in the same way we do now. And like you have social media and things are shared so quickly between people and communities and cultures. Like I just find it interesting that a lot of cultures kind of landed on this idea. But like you said, it kind of explains maybe like rabies or like diseases that they didn't know about at the time and madness, but also like in some ways, like I feel like he used it as a device for more like being sinful versus being a pure person.
It is interesting, like you're saying, that when you start to see different cultures or cultures in different areas that start to explain things the same sort of way.
Yeah.
That's true. I think even going back to like mythology, both like Japanese and Norse mythology both have a giant tree as a pretty key element of of the mythology, and those are obviously in very different parts of the world.
Yeah.
But at some point, I think it gets to kind of an interesting discussion of how much is this stuff potentially real or like innate in humans, because we are coming to these same conclusions without the same experiences, and vampires could be the same.
Yeah.
Same thing.
We need to do research. We need a deep dive into that. I think because so many texts have been adapted from them. They've been talked about, so remain popular, while other books from the time have just been forgotten. Yeah. I mean, they're pretty captivating characters, you know, like they have interesting traits that are, I think, easy to build upon. I think the biggest takeaway from this book for me is like how far we have come with these adaptations and how they've built so much on this idea. It just
While
makes
the
it
core remains the same.
Yeah. So it is interesting. I don't know, but it's interesting how a lot of science and technological advances were happening around that time. Also, Sherlock was published a few years before Dracula. Oh my gosh.
For books in the 18 and 1900s is just jumbled. Gotta get it settled out.
So interesting. Wow. I need to learn more about this. I was watching a TikTok of a historian explaining, like, he's done tons of research into vampires specifically, mostly because of, like, again, the popularity and like obsession with them throughout time, because he's like, it's one of the few like monsters that sticks around that people want to bang, basically. But he's like, they're
Sounds
like
TikTok.
sounds like TikTok, but just that they're like supposed to be like gentlemanly kind of, and like charming and like a little sinful and interesting, whereas like other monsters throughout time like are not put on the pedestal that vampires are. And I thought it was very interesting. It was a quick clip, but I thought it was an interesting topic, clearly.
I think there's an element to one of the scenes with Mina. They talk about like her not wanting to resist because it was like the third time or something that he had drank her blood.
Yeah.
So there's an element for like a lot of monsters. The monster shows up, the person dies, that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Built in returning with vampires, like that relationship continues, I guess.
Yeah, you come back.
It's interesting.
It's interesting. It's an interesting one, you guys. We should read some more vampire adaptations. I do have a closing question for us, if we're prepared, everybody, and then we will talk a little about November's book and the weekends we have in mind for that, if anyone's curious. So my closing question for y'all today is Dracula really gone? Do you feel like at the end he's gone? Do you think he comes back? What do you think?
I mean, my initial answer is just, yeah, he's gone. But then we wouldn't have these other adaptations. Clearly he comes back because there's still vampires in Buffy and Vampire Diaries and Twilight.
Yeah.
The legacy continues. He's got to show up somewhere.
Yeah.
But in terms of the book we read, I do think he's gone.
I do too, but I kind of like the idea of it being a little like ambiguous. I wish it had been, yet again, ambiguous would have been interesting.
That's part of what we liked so much with the ending of Sleepy Hollow. I mean,
Yeah.
that ambiguous ending made that story.
Because I like the idea as if he was still around, you're like, I don't know, you're just on the edge of your seat. Like, it's a creepier ending because you're like, oh, he's still out there. And he's still doing this to other people, you know? And like Stoker kind of wrote a happy ending for Dracula, which I didn't think it needed.
I agree.
That's how I felt, though. That's how I felt at the end. Brendan says he's Cheeto dust, so he's gone. Uzda also thinks he is for sure in the permanent Earth box, never to return. I think he's gone, but he left a bunch of vampires behind.
You think they missed an Earth box or two?
Missed one or two.
I like it.
Well, his brides are still around. I bet people have written things about his brides, like taking place after this story.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That would be cool. I feel like we need to look into that too. We have so much to learn, is what I'm realizing. I didn't finish, but surely from more Vampires Across the World for the adaptation. Vampires. Yeah. Yeah, they have to.
Makes good logical sense.
Yeah. Very true. He can't be the only one. He's just a very powerful one. Well, are we ready to talk November, party people? I'm excited for November. Jacob might have to perform a little bit here. Oh, okay, wait. Ariana does have an adaptation for us.
The Dowry.
The Dowry Blood is from the perspective of his bride. So we'll write that down. Oh my gosh, Nikki said the same one. Okay.
Excellent.
Perspective of his bride. So we're going to have to dig into that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
I feel like after that, because that one was written pretty recently, right, you guys? I think. So it'd be interesting to see a modern take on the brides and what they're up to. Ariana and Nikki, have either of you guys read that one?
2021 date on that one.
Yeah, that would be fun. Potentially. Well, yeah, so for our November pick, I'm quite excited because it might have been the one that I voted for, but we are reading Anne of Green Gables, classic. Jacob, where's your copy?
I don't have it yet. I just found out right now with this announcement. This is the first I've heard.
Exactly.
I'll be getting my copy later this week.
Okay. Well, Anne of Green Gables, what a strong, beautiful pick, if I do say so myself. We put the poll on my channel or on my community tab, and a lot of people voted, so that means y'all have to show up. No, but I think 50% honestly voted for this, so I'm excited. I hope it'll give good November vibes, fall vibes still. I think we have 2 weekends in mind, Jacob, so make sure I'm right here. But you guys, since you guys are the real ones, you're the loyal ones, you can let us know if a weekend sounds better for you, but I will put up the poll as I usually do right after the live. We have the weekend of the 16th or 17th in November, or the 23rd and 24th, one of those.
I think the original been if we get too much later, we start to run into U.S. Thanksgiving, and it just gets potentially busier for people, which may be true even with that first weekend or the weekend of the 23rd, 24th.
Yeah.
So it'd be a shorter turnaround to do the 16th, 17th, but still gives us 3 weeks from today to read it. How long is the book? How long is your copy?
I was just about to check that. Let me see here.
It'll be an interesting one. I know next to nothing about the story or author, so it'll be. I know that's part of the appeal of these classics. Is they exist, they persist for a reason, but not much about.
I did watch the adaptation when I was younger, the original one of the adaptations, and the first disc I watched until that DVD gave up. I loved it, but I never read it, so I'm very excited. It's 308 pages, and I do believe it's written for younger people, so I'm hoping the language will be a little bit easier. I don't know, but I think it is a young adult type of story, coming of age story. So
just to clarify on your weekends too, we're thinking of just doing the one discussion for this.
I'm thinking we will just probably need one for this book since it's a little bit shorter and should be easier to read. Does anyone have any preferences too for the weekend? So I think it was either the 16th or 17th that weekend, or the weekend after, which would be the 23rd or 24th. You guys can say here, but I'll also put the poll up right after we're done, so you can vote there. But I care about your opinions more than anyone else's because you're here. You're here with us. But yeah, I'm excited. I will probably have to rewatch the show as well. And I know a lot of people liked Anne with an E. That was a Netflix adaptation of it, which I haven't seen yet, but people liked it. So maybe we can squeeze in some adaptation talk. I don't know. We'll see. Well, any final thoughts, anyone? Jacob, any final thoughts for Dracula or going into the next book?
I'm looking for Dracula, looking forward to watching an adaptation of it. I think more so, I liked having the adaptation as a part of the discussion for the last one, for Sleepy Hollow. I think that would have been a lot for Dracula with how long and not necessarily difficult, but a little bit more intensive of a read.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it because there's some cuts that I would make if I was the editor. That I'm curious to see what choices have been made.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Honestly, I do want to dig into some more vampire lore, or even just like the history and legends of vampires and how we got where we are with them.
Yeah, we kind of worms a little bit with this one. I think with what both of our knowledge going in was.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm going to need to find a documentary. I'm sure it exists somewhere. Something. Okay. Well, I think those are all the thoughts for today. Feels nice. It feels like, I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I feel like this has rounded out my spooky season. So it feels complete. I'm like 5 books behind on my Goodreads goal, but I read this one. And that's
too, really. We read it in 2 halves. It's almost 2 books.
I know. Shouldn't adjust. Well, as always, y'all, everything is linked here in the description for you. Go on the community tab when we're done so that you can vote in the poll for the dates. And I am going to upload a video today. Finally, been sleeping on it. A vlog. So if you guys are here and you go and watch the vlog, make sure you comment some fly emojis so that I know you're a real one, that you were here. You saw the discussion. And then no one else will know what it's about, and it's our own inside joke. So make sure to leave your fly emojis if you watch it today. But that will be coming out. The poll will be up. So it's a big day on the channel. It's a big, big day. See, exactly, Emily. Flies. Our own joke. Well, have a beautiful day, Jacob.
You as well.
Have a beautiful day, chat. We'll see you guys in the next one in November. I'm excited. I'm psyched. So it's going to be fun.
Should be good.
Should be good. All right. Cheers, everybody.